medicate and go home. But she was, which again, she was in Allitt's care, and she was attempted to murder her on the 8th of March in 1991. But she was resuscitated, and she was transferred to another hospital where she recovered. Paul Crampton,
which we've already spoke about,
who was the 5-month-old. Again, he was admitted for a chest infection. And on the 20th of March, 1991, Allitt attempted to murder him with an insulin overdose on 3 occasions the day before he was transferred to another hospital.
So we said it was 2, where I mentioned earlier that he'd come back and spoke to him again. It was actually 3. So this bird not only is a case of takes the piss, but literally got to that point where she was like, I am going to kill this one. This is 3 attempts.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
And again, he was transferred to another hospital where he recovered.
3 attempts on a child's life for no other reason.
Yeah, no reason whatsoever on any of these.
Even if you had, sorry, I know I've interrupted you, but even if you had that sort of paranoid personality where you went, you know what, this kid's come in, it's got 666 marked on its forehead, it's got Fox written on its left toe, he's telling me his twin brother's called Damien. You know, you got to that point where you thought, oh, I'm hearing voices, this kid's reciting Latin, it has to die, it's going to become a serial killer. And you got to that point that you killed this kid. At least there would be some semblance of, you know, I understand it, because I'd be able to go, you know, they're paranoid schizophrenic, they're hearing voices, they're seeing hallucinations, they've done something which they thought was for the better good. I don't agree with it, but they at least thought they were acting in a positive way. They were trying to save people. Not this cow. She's literally been like child after child after child after child. I can't get into that mindset where I go and do something for no reason. Even the people who just nick a car and go joyriding, there's some sort of gratification from it. Look at me, I'm doing this, it's epic, I'm having a great time. There's an adrenaline rush to it. What adrenaline rush do you get from watching a 3-year-old take its last breath?
There is no reward. There's no adrenaline rush that I can personally think that you'd get out of that.
I hear of people talk about a God complex in relation to serial killers or killers in general many, many times, and I get it. Somebody looking or acting like my father or being my father and somebody going on a vengeance killing and taking them out, I can see them getting a kick out of that person taking their last breath. I can understand it. Somebody going, okay, well, this person has abused my child, I'm going to kill all people with red hair. Because you know what, the guy had red hair who abused my kid. I can see an understanding.
I think that's what's quite confusing over it, is that there's no.
Yeah, you're not telling me she had her arse kicked by a 4-year-old. It doesn't.
Well, these aren't even 4-year-olds. Some of these we're talking, you know, weeks old, months old. We're not talking. Not talking high years. So these was quite young children and babies.
Okay, carry
on. The next one was a Bradley Gibson, who was admitted to the ward for pneumonia. He had 2 cardiac arrests on the 21st of March 1991 due to Allitt administering insulin overdoses before he was transferred to another hospital where he recovered.
So
so there's, you can see here there is a pattern developing that they get transferred elsewhere out of her care. And
they're absolutely fine. So it's not something you couldn't see. Also, what I've just noticed is we're not talking 21st of March 1991 and then April 1999. We're talking 21st of March 1991, 1st of April. This is literally...
Yeah, I mean, well, as I said, on this one, this is from Wiki. Paul Crampton, the 20th of March. Bradley Gibson was the 21st of March. That's one day after. So you're going into work one day, trying to kill a child, an innocent 5-month-old, going home, talking to your friends, your family, having your dinner, going out, then going to work the next
brushing
day,
your teeth, poisoning your jaw,
and trying to kill another
injecting
innocent
water
5-year-old.
into your tit. Doesn't make sense, does it?
So there's no understanding of it, no comprehension of it at all.
No.
Then there was Michael Davidson, who was 6 years old at the time.
I'll be honest, without sounding offensive, I don't actually remember this one.
He was admitted to the ward for post-operative care following an operation to remove an air rifle pellet.
I do remember.
And I believe it was his father.
Yes, he was
that
at
was
his
on the
friend's
documentary.
house.
He'd gone to the father's friend's house.
I was a little bit speculative for this one. Now, don't get me wrong, he didn't deserve what happened in the slightest. But the father said he was at his friend's house. How old's this child?
He was 6 years old at the time.
6 years old. So, as our youngest is 4, so let's just, we can imagine this level of ability. And he'd gone to the father's friend's house, where there was an adult present, and presumably an older child, because otherwise, why would they just be taking the 6-year-old?
I don't know. I think it was that he'd gone to the family's friend's house, whether they was looking after and babysitting him, I don't know. I believe it was just other adults in the property.
At which point this adult had an air rifle that he was messing with, and he said, yes, I didn't know was loaded. I had a .22 Beverley Vulcan, which was just under the legal poundage as an air rifle. I guarantee you, I knew every single time that thing was loaded. I had a 177 GAT, which was a tiny little Patui pellet gun, as a child. I guarantee you, I knew every single time that thing was loaded. And at no point did I ever have it around a 6-year-old. But whatever.
I have no clue on rifles, guns, or anything like that. But if I had one, I'd know about it. You don't have something in your possession not knowing about it.
You wouldn't just be firing it around your 6-year-old.
And apparently it ricocheted around the room. But anyways, that aside.
So we're boiled down to the kid got shot in his head by his father's mate.
I think it was his chest, wasn't it?
Mm.
But again, though, he'd gone for post-operative care following the operation to remove the air rifle pellet. And after being injected with insulin multiple times through a cannula on his hand, then he fell unconscious before being stabilised by another doctor on the ward, and he later made a full recovery.
I remember the doctor saying in the video, this one made a full recovery, this one did this. And you could see the guy was trying to be as professional, and he no doubt was good at his job, other than the whole...
Yeah, it sounded like the doctor, I think it was that one that he tried to put a report on, but they just put it aside.
From what I understood, they tried to get a report from one of the medical guys who was big on insulin and how all the diabetic treatment worked. And the guy had said, well, we've got 13 victims.
Yeah, he said
and
didn't add up.
Possible. No, the problem this doctor was having was this one guy said they could have all been natural causes because they didn't have the records saying they had this high amount of insulin in the system. They didn't have that. They just had that they'd had a heart attack. Now, let's bear in mind, statistically, let's say you have one child, which is quite rare, I should imagine, but let's say you have one child have a heart attack a year, yeah? Now, you've then got to quantify that it is possible that you could have 13 in the space of 6 months. It's extraordinarily unlikely, and it needs looking into. But does that mean it's impossible? And that's what this guy was doing. He was saying, these are natural causes. They might not be anything that you guys are really worried about.
Yeah.
There might not be a problem there. He's also protecting the hospital. You don't
he lost his job. He was made redundant.
Well, he should do, because let's be honest, the guy was an arsehole. If he'd have looked into it properly and if he'd have taken tests...
I don't think he was allowed to. If I get some understanding of it, I don't think he was allowed to look into it properly, because I think he'd questioned it with another doctor at the time that was on duty, with him. I don't know whether they were swapping shifts. But both of them got made redundant. But I think, as far as I'm aware, one of them, the main one on the documentary, had suspicions about it, but didn't have a clue that it was this nurse doing it.
Oh no, this guy was brilliant. I can't remember his name. He was an Indian or a Pakistani doctor, but he was really good in that he tried to look into everything, and the way he was explaining the treatment that he'd given to the children and whether they'd made a recovery or not, you could see, as much as he was being polite and professional, you could see by watching the documentary there was just little blips on his face where you could tell he was either really sad that something bad had happened, or he was really chuffed that he'd saved that child's life. And it's not even that he'd saved the child's life, which he did, and he deserves every credit, but it's that the child lived. And that's a big difference.
And that's just it, though. He became a doctor to save a child's life. He didn't become a doctor to inject them with insulin and try and murder them.
No, he certainly didn't. And he paid the price for it because he had to watch children die that he shouldn't have done, which must be appalling with it itself. But then he also lost his job. And this guy did everything he was supposed to do on the face of it. But then likewise...
He lost his job, but they also closed the ward down.
Yeah.
They did shut the children's ward down. I don't know if it's a big part of that hospital or if that was a standalone hospital. I'm not actually 100% sure.
Well, from what I understand, the whole place was a children's unit.
The children's unit did get shut down.
But likewise, I've just sat here and said, this guy was brilliant. He looked after all these children. He did everything he was supposed to do. These parents went into that hospital and Beverly sat there with them, and she was a brilliant nurse. And she did everything she was supposed to do.
She appeared to.
That's what I mean. So I'm saying this about this doctor, and don't get me wrong. I've watched the documentary. I've looked at the details. I've taken it on board. I've made an informed decision based on the available information. And I've gone, you know what? This guy's sound. I'd want him looking after my kid. You know what? You go up to a hospital and you've got Beverly Allitt there, and she's telling you all of this positive information. And she's telling you everything's going to be fine with her years of experience and so on and so forth. You're going to take it on board. I don't know if this guy was behind it. Neither do you.
That's something we'll never know.
He wasn't. We know it was her. She's admitted to it.
But we'll never know if anybody else was actually more aware and didn't speak up.
Yeah, but you can see what I'm saying is you can't... And I know I say this from a past that's totally different to the majority of people. I'm very, very aware of this, and I'm fine with that. I've learned to deal with that. I'm even happy with it. I'm comfortable with it. I use it. But the point still stands. She put on this amazing face, and people bought it. I don't know if any one of these or anybody in any field is who they say they're going to be. That's how a psychopath works.
I think that's like that. Anything and anywhere, though. You know, you're never going to know that, whichever field you're talking about.
So have you got the rest of the victims?
Yes, the next one is, if I'm pronouncing this correctly, Yik Hung Chan.
Yik Hung Chan.
And he was
also known as Henry. We're going to shoot with Henry on this one.
And he was admitted to the ward following a fall on the 21st of March 1991. And he had an oxygen desaturation attack before he was transferred. So again, another one transferred to another hospital where he recovered.
I just want to shout out, and I'm so sorry. I want to shout out to Evil Pudding, because that just reminded me of Courtney, because you said, I don't know, and I said, oh, desaturation. And you've not listened to this cast yet, but Evil Pudding, Courtney and Pat, absolutely hilarious, and they're also really, really good and part of the inspiration for doing this. Go and check them out. She said Nintendo. I think she was trying to say something like Sergeant Major Nintendo. Or Lieutenant or something, and I don't know how the hell it came about, but she went, yes, Sergeant Nintendo, and I was just like, that's funny. But anyway, go on. Sorry, apologies. This victim.
And again, as I said, he was transferred to another hospital where he recovered. So that was a theme still carrying on there.
And and nobody notices. So you worked at a different type of theatre, but you worked at a theatre and you had a team and people would come in, right? Are you telling me if people just started randomly dropping off around you that you wouldn't have put the pieces together? This was the last guy that came in, and then all of a sudden these things started to occur. You don't have to be a copper to figure that out. It was one after another.
You'd like to think that somebody would pick up on something, but fortunately in life that's not how it always works.
No, sorry. I know. My wife just telling me.
The last one on this list is Katie Phillips. So she is Becky Phillips' twin. And unfortunately, Becky Phillips didn't make it. She was murdered.